Hey family, my name is Richard.
And I'm Brittni.
And we are the founders of LoveAlwaysMinistries.com. And we want to say thank you so much for tuning into this channel. And if you guys could you make sure to subscribe to this channel so you can stay updated with everything that's going on right here on this channel.
And if you'd like to partner with our ministry, you can do so by heading over to lovealwaysministries.com/donate to make a donation today. Or you can give by snail mail. Just look for the website at the bottom of every page on our website. And if you haven't checked out our book, A Call to Purity, what are you waiting for? It is available on Amazon or on our website. Make sure that you pick yourself up a copy today. It is changing lives all over the world. We love you guys. We can't do what we do without you. So thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your support. And thank you for tuning into our channel. We love you guys so much, and we pray God's blessings over you. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Let's Talk Purity podcast with Brittni and Richard De La Mora. We're so excited that you guys are here, and we are bringing you a very special guest today. Yep. Today, we have Pastor George Molina. He has a church called Lifeway Church in the Phoenix, Arizona area. So if you guys are in that area and you're looking for a church, my husband and I have been there. It's an incredible church. Pastor George Molina is an incredible man of God, so pure in heart. He's a mentor to my husband. So if we want you guys to hear from him, you need to hear from him. Pastor George, thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's so great to be with you guys today. It's an honor and a privilege. We love you guys. Our church loves you guys. My family loves you guys. And thank you again for having me on the podcast today.
Pastor George, we really appreciate you. And guys, I know we talk a lot on this podcast about accountability. Yeah. This is one guy, y'all, that I am accountable to. What I love about Pastor George is he's always checking up on me. Yeah. And I love that about him. He's always checking up on me, asking me pivotal questions like, how's your marriage? How are you and Brittni? How's the family doing? Checking up on me. I'll be honest here because we like to keep it hot, honest, open, and transparent. Last week, I had a little anxiety attack and Pastor George kind of helped me through it. He sat down, Pastor George and I were talking, and man, he kind of got my head straight, my heart straight, but there is nothing like it, love, when we have people like that in our lives. And Pastor George, we honor you. We thank you. Thank you for what you're doing in my life, in my family's life, and couldn't thank you enough. So we definitely had to bring him on the show because he is somebody who definitely touches my life. So just thank you, Pastor George. So today, what are we talking about today with Pastor George?
Today we're going to be talking all about purity in the realms of marriage and leadership. Stay tuned though, because if you're not a leader in church, don't let that turn you away. Like you are a leader. Like as a Christian, you're a leader, whether it's in your family, if you're a stay-at-home mom, if you work a 9-to-5, if you're a CEO, like whatever realm you find yourself in this world, like you are a leader because you're a Christian, you're an ambassador for Christ. So we're going to talk about effective leadership and how to be pure through that.
Absolutely. Pastor George, how many years have you been in ministry?
Man, I grew up in the church. My father was a pastor as far as I can remember, back as I can remember. But I've been pastoring Lifeway Church, I think now for 19 years.
Come on.
20. But I was involved in ministry probably even in my teenage years. So really, this is all I've known. I did work secularly for a while before going into full-time ministry. So I know what it's like to live out your faith in the marketplace, in the public sector. And so it's just been leadership and ministry probably for the last, I want to say almost 30 years.
Come
since
on.
I graduated high school.
30 years. And one thing that I love about you so much is just your countenance and your heart. You've been doing this for 30 years, yet just the purity in your leadership, in your life, how you honor Rosie. It's just incredible.
Rosie's his wife.
Yes, by his wife, by the way. But when you're involved in ministry or just involved, just saying life in general, oftentimes our heart could be affected by life, by ministry.
Yeah.
How do you keep a pure heart for so long.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know you've probably seen a lot, heard a lot, yet, I mean, just your life in general is just speaks of purity. Like you're just, man, like one of the most whole, healthy people that I know. Could you kind of just shed some light and insight in regards of just keeping pure, just like in leadership?
Man, I think purity in leadership is really an important topic to talk about, especially given, you know, what we see in the world today with leadership and secular leadership, leadership that touches, you know, every aspect of our lives, particularly in the spiritual realm and in the church realm. You know, I think that one of the key factors to keeping pure in leadership is having a humble heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Humility is never believing the hype about you.
Hey,
never
come on.
about the hype about yourself or your ministry. That it's always coming from a place of humility, right?
Yes.
Because the moment that you adopt a prideful position in leadership, that I've earned this, that I should have this, there's an entitlement. Well, now you're setting yourself up for a fall, right?
Wow.
Pride for a fall. So I think it's always important that as a leader, that if there's going to be purity in leadership, regardless if you're talking about purity in leadership in church or leadership in your home or your family, right, at your job, there has to, it really boils down to what's the position of your heart.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And
That's
if there's pride, then honestly, the Bible says, right, that God sets himself against the proud. So now your leadership is literally at odds with who God is.
Come on.
You have to have that humility in your heart. There's got to be humility and acknowledging that whatever is good in your life, right, whatever leadership God has given you, whatever you've been able to accomplish, it's all God, right? He works through us, and don't try to take the credit, right, where you shouldn't, right, and take the glory where you shouldn't.
Hey, come on.
And how do you manage, like, because in ministry and in marriage, like, offenses are going to come, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's, you know, somebody leaves your church, or maybe your wife says or does something, like, how do you keep your heart, like, offenses come, but how do you keep your heart from growing offended?
Wow, that's so good. I think that, you know, whenever you're involved in ministry, there's always the potential to get hurt.
Yeah.
I've been in ministry for as long as I can remember, whether it's watching my father grow up. And so those moments where you can get offended and hurt, they're always there. And so again, I think you have to remember, right? Again, it's the heart. What does Proverbs 4 tell us? It says, guard your heart above all, because it affects the issues of life.
Yep.
So that moment, if my heart is adopting pride, or if it's adopting, you know, let's just say bitterness or revenge, that's telling me that there's no humility. And now what's going to happen is the moment I adopt pride in an offense, you know, you hurt me, you offended me, you spoke against me, you spoke against my family, my ministry. Well, now you're just me-centered, right? Jesus said this, is the servant greater than the master? If they did it to me, won't they do it to you?
Come on.
So also Paul tells us to count it a joy that we share in the sufferings of Christ. So I'm not saying it's easy, but this is just part of being a disciple of Christ, is that if I'm going to share in the victory of Christ, I have to be willing to share in the sufferings too.
Hey, come on.
So good. And can you talk to, like, the parents and then the spouses as well in that area? Because obviously, like, you know, parents are going to get offended possibly with their children. Like, how do you guard your heart from growing offended with maybe some of the hurtful things your children might say? And then also speak to spouses as well. Like, how do you really protect your heart from growing offended to, like, the everyday little things, right? Because the small foxes spoil the vine.
Hey.
And so how do you guard your heart from those things? Because these are the people that you're closest to. And oftentimes we not only hurt the people that we're closest to unintentionally, but we can also be hurt by the people that we're closest to unintentionally because we see them the most. So how do you guard your heart from that?
Man, that's another great question. I think that what Rosie and I have done, Rosie and I will have been married 30 years.
Come on,
wait, that deserves a celebration right there.
30 years, just a couple of
celebration.
Yeah. 30 years in a couple of days, but we've had, everybody has their moments, right? And I'm not going to tell you that we've gotten everything right all the time. But I would say this. I would say that that again, it's looking at that person as the one that God brought into your life. Let me just address the marriage part first. Is like, this is the partner, this is the spouse that God has brought into your life. And God says to give allowances for one another.
Absolutely.
And I think you first have to recognize your shortcomings. If you don't recognize that you have shortcomings, then you're not going to be able to tolerate or look past their shortcomings.
Wow,
right?
that's good. Come on.
They're not perfect, but start with yourself in this aspect. Like, I'm not perfect either, right?
Yeah.
And so just as maybe they may have done something to start I don't like to even call it conflict. I like to call it intense fellowship.
Yeah. Intense fellowship. That's a good one. We got to use that.
They may have done something, or I may have done something, but it's not about, who's right. It's about getting it right.
Hey, come on. That's a word.
I like to tell, when I'm talking to couples and stuff, I like to tell them, look, I'm not on your side and I'm not on your side. I'm on both your sides.
Hey, come on.
I'm for healing. So
yes.
I think to answer that question is, you just got to acknowledge that in yourself, that there's shortcomings, and there's shortcomings. But what does God tell us to do? He tells us to make allowances.
Absolutely.
You've got it. I think the key word here is grace.
That's good.
Grace. Yeah, that's so good. Pastor George, like, when it comes to ministry, you've been doing this for years now. There's one thing that happens along the journey of ministry, just along the journey in life, especially when you're consistent in doing something for a long time. Yeah. And that is the word called familiarity.
Hey, there you go.
I think familiarity, affects our purity.
Yeah.
Because when you grow familiar, you grow stagnant. Yeah. We're talking about, maybe pride issues happen when you're familiar with something. I think you lack faith when you're familiar. Yeah. We think about Jesus, right?
Couldn't even do miracles.
Right, because you lack faith, and then you lack honor.
Yeah.
How do we have it, Pastor George, where we don't grow familiar with each other, where you don't grow familiar in the church? Because oftentimes it's easy to grow familiar in the church. Yeah. You're there every Sunday, you're there for Wednesday, you're there for this, you're there for that. In your marriage, every day we're just seeing, each other. Okay.
Or even the presence of God, you grow familiar with
in the presence of God. There's right?
So many things, your blessings, you can grow familiar with those, and then you don't appreciate them anymore.
Absolutely. How do we not allow familiarity to get the best of us?
I think that one of the ways that you can approach or combat that attitude, right, or that perspective, is to keep things fresh. So keeping things fresh. The moment things become familiar, they become stale. It loses its significance.
Yes.
It loses its power, right? Its authority.
Yep.
It loses its influence on you because things become familiar.
Yeah.
So I think that one of the things that needs to happen in marriages and families and ministry is that you got to keep things fresh.
Yes.
Let me address this like in a marriage perspective, right? So everybody wants to have a thriving, successful marriage, but the really it's in the details. So what are you doing to keep it fresh?
What are you doing? That's good. What are you doing?
your communication fresh, your passion fresh, your intimacy fresh, the plans that you have for your marriage. What are you doing to keep it fresh? I think about this is, Jesus said, he uses a story or an illustration in the book of Mark, and he talks about, new wine and new wineskin, right? So everybody wants the new wine, but before the new wine comes, there has to be new wineskins.
Come on.
In other words, I have to be stretched. I have to be made new or renewed, right? So I think it's really about, being transformed by the renewing of our mind. It's that whole, being renewed in our heart and our spirit.
Yeah.
As I'm being renewed, as I am being transformed, because none of us are a finished product.
Yeah.
I didn't wake up today and God say, okay, I'm done with George.
Yeah.
And or with any of us. So we're being renewed day by day. So as I'm being renewed in my thinking, that affects my living. It affects my relationships. It affects my leadership.
Yep.
And as I'm being renewed, right now, I have new thoughts about how I love my spouse.
Come on.
I have new thoughts about how I love my children and my church and my ministry. I get new thoughts. And so because it's fresh, it never becomes familiar.
Hey, come on.
When something is fresh, I mean, think about this. Do you want the stale loaf of French bread? Or do you want the fresh loaf of French bread?
Yeah.
I'm gonna take the fresh one.
Come on.
A million times over than the stale one. So the issue is, what are you doing to keep it fresh? And really that starts in the renewing of your mind. Like, God, you have to renew my mind, the way I think about my marriage, about the way I think about my family, about my finances, really our lives today, the lives that we're living today in every aspect, leadership, marriage, family, whatever, our lives today are the result of our thinking yesterday.
Yeah. Hey, come on. Good word.
So if my thoughts aren't being renewed, then things aren't going to stay fresh. They're going to become familiar.
Yeah. I like that you touched about that, especially with just becoming fresh.
Yeah.
I've realized in myself, in my mind, that I've become really fresh when I rest. And I think where there's a lack of rest, then there's a lack of freshness, right? Yeah. Because I think it's so imperative for us to rest, take Sabbath days, really resting in God, right? When our mind is focused on Christ, we'll experience his peace. The challenge with being able to rest is that it's not easy, because we have to actually kind of work into rest because of the culture we're in today. Let's be honest, we're in a works culture, right? I know when you and I went over to Europe, it was cool because they shut everything down. It's time for a siesta, right? It was like a random hour. We're like, dude, we want to like walk around. Remember we wanted to go to stores.
That
and
was
like,
in Italy, right?
In Italy. And they just shut everything down. We're not used to that. We're like, what are you talking about? We got to go to stores. Like we got things to do. But the reality is that we need to enter into God's rest. And I don't know, maybe there's somebody watching here today, Pastor George, that battles with rest. And I think oftentimes when we have a rest problem, we have a trust problem. How can we, like in leadership, right? And here's what I mean by this. I think sometimes it's like we can easily compare ourselves to other people, other marriages, other leaders, right? This person's fruitful, this person's doing this, that, et cetera, et cetera. But how do we learn to be able to like rest and trust in God with like what he's doing in our lives, and not allowing time or what somebody else is doing affect what God is trying to do in and through us?
That's really good.
Man, rest. I mean, honestly, you can speak on this, for an entire week on rest. In fact, it's an issue that most Christian leaders do not do well in. They do not rest.
Absolutely.
And here's the thing is they wear it as a badge of honor, when actually not resting is disobedience to God.
Good.
Wow.
Yeah. So good. Yeah.
I need to hear that, because I pride myself. Because I pride myself in work. Like Pastor George, I'll get off and be like, babe, I killed it today for 14 hours. And she'll be like, cool. Like that's
we're so different in that. I appreciate rest because I hustled and grinded before I knew Jesus. So Jesus has taught me the art of just chill. Like things are going to happen. Godspeed. He'll open one door for you that'll just blow your mind while you were resting. And that door may have stayed closed if you were hustling and grinding and hustling and grinding. Like I've seen God do great things in my rest.
It's funny because some people will say, I haven't taken a vacation for 7 years and I've been going hard in ministry for 10 years. And they say it like as something that they celebrate. And I'm going, whoa, like you need rest.
I'm like, I feel sorry for you. Go take a vacay.
I don't like to say it's a condemnation. I'd say it's like a warning that you're not operating the way God intended you to operate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So here's what I would say is that when you don't rest, right, as a leader, or it doesn't matter, as a parent, as a boss, or whatever, and you don't take a day of rest, what you're doing is, now think about this, what you're doing is you're living in an Egypt mindset.
Hey, that's
you're
a good
living
word.
as a slave, because the Jewish people, the Hebrews, while they were in Egypt, they worked nonstop.
That's so true.
Nonstop. So they come out of Egypt, God institutes the Sabbath, and he's telling them, listen, you're under a different system. You're no longer a slave, you're a free man. Now, here's what happens a lot of times, is that a lot of times we work, and whenever we feel like we worked enough, whether it be 7 days, 8 days, 20 days, whatever, then we say, well, now I've earned my rest. I've earned the time to rest. And so here's what I would say. We shouldn't work to rest. We should work from a place of rest.
Hey,
That's
come on.
So good.
So that from rest, I launch my work. Now watch, when I launch my work from a place of rest, the work becomes more productive.
Yes.
That's a good one.
And so now instead of working to rest, I'm working from rest.
Yes, come on,
you need
Pastor.
to write a book on this.
Come on, Pastor George.
You have some wisdom in this.
And it was something that out of COVID, let me be honest, I was the one going nonstop, never quit. COVID, when I got COVID back in 2020, God said, you need to rest, son. And I'm like, no, you need to rest. And God convicted me.
Come on.
And I said, okay, I'm taking my Sabbath and I'm not doing anything ministry related. And my Sabbath is holy and separate unto God.
Come on.
I take that religiously. Like I schedule it. This is my Sabbath on Monday. For me, it's Mondays. Mondays is my day of rest. And so it makes my Tuesday to Sunday even more productive.
Come on.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, Chick-fil-A, you guys, they're closed on Sundays and they're like a multi-million-dollar corporation. I mean, if not more, I'm not sure what their stats are, but they're doing great. So don't be afraid to rest. What does your Sabbath look like? What does that look like for you?
So for me, usually it's sitting down with Rosie and having coffee in the morning. It's reading. It's sometimes doing something that I've never done before. Like I'll give you an example. One day I woke up on my Sabbath and I know this is gonna sound crazy. And I said, you know what? I've never made homemade tortillas before. And I said, I'm gonna make homemade tortillas.
Dude,
so
that's
love
awesome,
that.
man.
So when the kids got home from school, there was homemade tortillas. They're like, what is that? And I'm like,
come on.
That's amazing.
It's trying something new.
Come on.
Right? It could be also, it's going to golf. For me, I like to golf.
Come on, Pastor George.
It really is just getting disconnected and from ministry, but staying connected with your family.
I love that.
Right? Like Rosie and I will go out and have coffees, and I won't have her cook that day. We'll go out because the kids are in school or whatnot. We'll go out to lunch. It's really about restoring my relationship with my wife and really connecting with her. And because if that's not strong, if my relationship with my wife is not strong, then nothing I build will be strong.
Wow, geez, that's
so I use Sabbath to really work on my relationship with my wife.
That's beautiful. I love that. Do you have any other questions for Pastor George before we wrap up?
Before we wrap up, we always ask this one question. And it's a question that we like to ask our guests. And this is the big question. Pastor George, what do you do to guard your heart?
Man, really, there really is no secret sauce to guarding your heart. Really, it really boils down to, do you have the discipline to stay in the word? Your word I have hidden in my heart that I may not sin against thee.
Come on.
You know, again, no secret sauce. It's do you have the tenacity? Do you have the discipline to say, I'm going to get into the word and I'm going to let the word of God get into me?
Come on.
The more I get into the word, it's funny when I'm not in word and prayer, everything seems impossible. Like I can't do that. I can't, that's too big. It's out of my reach. But when I come out of the word and my prayer time with God, it's like, man, I can climb Mount Everest, you know, everything's possible. Right?
Yeah.
And so I would say this is, purity so important. How do we maintain that? Well, it's really the word. There's nothing else. And it's not that it just doesn't help. It's not the people you hang around. It's not, it's not getting off social media, even though that can help. It really boils down to this. Ultimately, like we can stay pure by avoiding some things. Absolutely. But there has to come a moment where we learn to conquer things.
I think you need to replay it, re-listen. Pastor George,
like it, share it.
Yeah, gave us so many nuggets, and you guys understand why this guy is a part of my life. Pastor George, we love you. We appreciate you. And you guys, if you're in the Phoenix area, Lifeway Church is where it's at. Don't get me wrong. I love every other church in the Phoenix area, but Lifeway Church is where it's at in Arizona. So
you definitely got to check out Lifeway Church. You guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Let's Talk Purity podcast, which is brought to you by Edifi.app. We love you guys so much, and we will see you not next week, but the week after, since we are now doing bi-weekly podcasts. We love you guys so much, and we pray that you have a super blessed rest of your day.